a little fuzzier.
Mine was off the web page. I cut and pasted off the web page.
Well, I took mine myself. I walked by.
Now, if we only were at the same tiles, we could like look over at each other, like. You know,
Yeah.
I guess I have to go this way if you're over there.
Yeah. So it's going to probably take Jackie a moment to get us switched over to streaming. Okay, here we go. She's about to start to stream us now. So I'll give you the official word in just a moment, but she's starting to switch it over. Okay, we're streaming.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Radnor Township School District Curriculum Committee meeting for June 2nd, 2020. This will be our first of 2 curriculum meetings for the month of June. Starting off the meeting, I want to just take a moment really briefly, and I'm really talking, I think, a lot to our students when I say this. I want you to know that me personally, I've been very touched and affected by the events that have occurred this week. And I think a lot of us are taking pause and thinking about how to implement positive change. And so I want you to know that one thing that is ruminating around the curriculum committee is looking at how our curriculum in Radnor specifically can address some of these systematic issues in society around racism, and just to really continue that conversation and be a powerful voice in our society. So there will be more to come on this. We haven't really, as a committee, started discussing this, and I know the administration is pondering how to be most effective as well. I just want the students out there to know that I'm speaking for myself, that this has my attention, and I promise you that we're gonna put heads together and try to at least make sure we're doing everything we can locally to address the issues that we see and just the anger and things that are long overdue that need to be talked about. All right, so with that said, we're going to try to now move our attention, although it's been, quite a stressful week. We're going to move our attention to our curriculum committee agenda. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Bechtold.
We have an exceptionally full curriculum committee agenda tonight. So in the interest of time, we're going to jump right into it.
Okay. So I am so sorry here. Are we up to the minutes on the approval
Public
of the
comment. You need to ask if there's public comment.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there any public comment? Is anybody on here with public comment? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to loop back. I don't see Michael. All right. That brings us to the minutes, the approval of the last meeting minutes. Committee, did everybody or anybody want to make comments or have any changes? I see shaking of heads. Andrew, anything? Okay. Amy, it looks like we're good with that. All right, so let's dive right in then. And I'm going to again throw it over to Mr. Bechtold.
All right, so the first thing on our agenda is to go through some textbook adoptions. We have Dr. Kearney and Mr. Booterball here, and we also have some of our world language teachers who I will let them introduce, and their team can go ahead and get started and talk to us about some of these exciting resources that we're looking to have the board approve for use with our students.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Bechtold said, tonight we are bringing forward to you both a 7th grade social studies textbook and supplemental materials for adoption, as well as Spanish books for several of our high school courses, and materials for a new Latin course at the high school as well. Mr. Budabal worked with the World Language Department to review titles and decide on the ones that we're bringing forward today. I work with a team of teachers to look at the middle school social studies books. We also have Mrs. Foley here, who's a 7th grade social studies teacher, who can speak about the book selection and the process that they went through. And Mrs. Alfonso, who's the department chair at the high school for world languages, and Dr. McGay, who's the Latin teacher at the high school, are also here to answer questions that you may have. So I think we'll start with social studies, since there's one book to look at there, and then we'll move on to world languages. Mrs. Foley?
Here I am. Sorry about that.
No problem. I knew you were there. So if you don't mind, would you just talk to the committee a little bit about the process you went through to select the books and what it is about this book that caught the group's attention and why you're making this recommendation?
Absolutely. We needed a new social studies textbook for 7th grade, primarily due to the fact that the current version of it, or the version we had been using, had gone out of print, and their online resources were 40% effective at best. So we reviewed a number of titles that Dr. Kearney got for us over the course of the year, and then narrowed it down to a few more selections this spring. And then we heard from 3 different publishers who did an online presentation to us during quarantine time. And we settled on the National Geographic Cengage title, which we felt really was the most engaging for students. Both its print version and its online materials really seemed to be much more exciting, engaging, and interesting than, especially for students, than other textbooks that we had the opportunity to review. So I think we're pretty satisfied with our choices. In particular, the National Geographic seems to have really maximized their online resources, which we definitely took into consideration, especially moving forward with our probable need to keep having this as an online resource. So I think that we've chosen well, in my opinion, and I'm really looking forward to using it next year. In terms of its content, it meets all the needs in terms of the topics that we cover in the course. We felt like the reading level was appropriate for our 7th graders, and we're very satisfied moving forward.
What are we currently using? What is this replacing?
This is replacing, I believe it's a Holt McDougall. Jim, maybe you can.
Yeah, it's World History, Ancient Civilizations Through the Renaissance is the name of the book. It's got a 2012 copyright.
So it's not so out of date. It's not,
No. The content's not necessarily out of date. The online resources, we've lost access to the online resources that we're going to want to have. They've expired. And it's not as new and fresh as the current one.
Okay. Anybody on the committee? Anything else? Go ahead, Sarah.
I should also mention, then I think Ms. Dunn has a question, but I'll just mention the adoption, as you may have noticed, also is to have just classroom sets of the hard copy of the book and online access for all students. So the teachers would keep a hard copy of the book in their classroom for when we're in school, but students would access the online resources, online textbook at home.
Oh, okay. Sarah, Ms. Dunn, you had something?
Yeah, I first of all, I wanted to say, I don't know if it was you who asked for it or the textbook publisher that offered it. I really appreciated that you gave the school board members or the committee members test links to be able to go in and see these textbooks. It was really helpful to understand what we were looking at and be able to look at it in more depth than just quickly flipping through a book like we've done in the past. So thank you for coordinating that. 2 things. One, the print and online textbooks. So it says 90 of those. And I'm just wondering, are we, my impression of our middle school grades is that there are 100, maybe 120 students, and you figure there are 40 in watershed. So is 90 just a buffer in case I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
purchasing appropriate numbers. Is this because there's some bigger classes coming from from lower levels?
I think as teachers, we made an estimate based on past class sizes and also having a few extra for students with IEPs who might require an additional print textbook at home. But I think another benefit of using a more current textbook is that we can order more, whereas with the previous textbook, they just weren't making it anymore. So we felt like 90 was a good number to start with.
Yeah, the 90 we thought about. I'm sorry.
Sorry, but 150 online seems like a lot since the watershed students won't be taking this course.
No, we looked at enrollment numbers when we came up with those. So the 90 was saying 30 copies per classroom teacher. The class sizes are not 30, but it does include, as Ms. Foley said, some for some students who might require an online text, as well as in case some get lost over the next few years so that we don't have to order them necessarily. So there's a little bit of a buffer there. The other 150 do take into account the 40 students who would be in watershed, but it is based on the current 6th grade enrollment for next, and just assuming that that's going to stay steady till next year for 7th grade.
But I didn't think watershed takes social studies. Do they use the same textbook?
No, I'm sorry. They're not using this textbook. It took out the 40 students from watershed. They do teach social studies.
Okay.
So social studies is integrated into the watershed program, but they didn't feel the need to have a copy of this textbook as part of that program.
Okay, so the 150 online subscriptions includes the watershed students.
No, it's the total of 240 online subscriptions, because there's 90 print copies, and then the additional 150, the 90 print and online copies, plus the 150 online copies, that 240 total.
That's how many students, that's how many 7th graders she
does not include 40 watershed students.
Okay, and then, sorry, last question on this one. You mentioned, or Ms. Foley mentioned, that the subscriptions to the last textbook have expired. What's the lifespan? What's the term of this online subscription that we're purchasing?
This is a 6-year subscription.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, can you go back through that again? Why are there only 90 print versions and then so many more online?
Because we were just going to have classroom sets of the print version for teachers and students to use, and students would only be using the online version at home.
Okay, got it. I missed that. I'm sorry. Okay.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to quickly pull up what our enrollment for current enrollment in 6th grade is as we're talking here, but please continue.
Okay, Amy, did you have something you want to?
Just 2 questions that probably apply to both textbooks that'll be spoken of tonight. And I think I'm getting the answer through what Dr. Kearney has already said, and that is that it sounds like students are leaning more towards using online resources as opposed to textbooks. I'm just wondering if there's been a shift, and if you could just briefly describe that, number one. And my second question is, I guess this is for Mr. Bechtold and Mr. Buderball, and that is that being new to the curriculum committee, I just wanted to know if textbook review is something that has any alignment to what we have in place currently as a curriculum review cycle, or that's something that could come up at really any time when it's necessary.
So I guess a couple questions. I think both our students and our teachers are becoming much more comfortable with online textbooks. It's something that we've really tried to have as often as possible with our recent adoptions the past several years, but clearly under the current circumstances, it's seen as something that's pretty important in most cases. We do have books from time to time, and I think one might be talked about tonight, that don't necessarily have an online component, but where at all possible, we try to have online access because most people are becoming much more familiar and comfortable with them. In addition, it's not just the book itself, it's the supplemental materials that are available online that both teachers and students benefit from and are becoming much more comfortable using, even coming to expect. Regarding the review of textbooks as part of the curriculum review cycle, one of the things that we do look at the curriculum review cycle are the materials that we're using, including taking a look and see what is the copyright of the current books, when did we adopt it, how long have we had it, do we anticipate any expiring anytime soon when it comes to online adoption? And then typically we try to get a sense of, over the next several years, what are the adoptions we're likely to be bringing forward. So for example, from the social studies audit that we presented in 2018, at that time we said that we were going to be rolling in the textbooks adoption. So last year we adopted 6th grade world geography and cultures books. This year it's the 7th grade books. Next year we're going to be looking at 8th grade books, in addition to some titles at the high school as well.
Great, thank you for that broader explanation. And my only final question about online materials is that I think I read somewhere, for some students, reading online is more challenging because your eyes are moving in a different direction and tracking the material is harder. And I'm just wondering if we're paying attention or monitoring in any way how using online materials may be more challenging for some students, and that we have we're on top of that and we have some interventions to help, rather than just assuming, which I'm not saying we are, but just assuming that it's a one-for-one, that if you can read a textbook, you can just as easily read online materials. From research I've read, it's not exactly the same for all students.
No, I think you're right about that. And maybe Ms. Meneman put her video on, maybe she was going to comment a bit about this, but from time to time, there are students who we certainly identify as needing a hard copy of the book, and we make those available. And sometimes it's preference, and if we've got the books available, we may make them available then also. So it is something that is considered. I don't know if Ms. McMenamin wanted to say anything more about that.
Yeah, I think in those situations, they're the kids that we encourage to have an extra copy of the book at home. Some of the textbook features too do have a like immersive reader component where it can highlight the lines, for the kids as they read it. There's an audio component on some of the textbooks too. So it does have some features that can help kids who aren't the best at it online. But I think having those couple extra books are the best thing to do, is just make sure those kids have that book at home if it's troublesome for them.
That brings up an interesting question. Maybe Ms. Foley or Ms. McMenamin can answer it. If a student doesn't have an IEP, but they request to have a hard copy, can we accommodate that? If, say, you just, I can't read this online thing.
Sure.
And we can accommodate that. This will allow us to do that.
I mean, certainly we have in the past. I usually, try to make it official and record both their book numbers and track it down later. And I typically try to make sure that they have a legitimate reason for wanting one at home, and not just that they don't feel like carrying it. But we have typically had enough copies most years to make that happen. So I would hope that would remain the case. Although I definitely agree that that a class set is totally adequate, and then having most kids with online access. I think that, a kid shouldn't need paperwork in order to get an extra textbook if he or she really needs one.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's good to hear.
And just to go back to Ms. Dunn's question, currently we have 265 students in 6th grade. So we'd anticipate approximately that number next year in 7th grade.
Ms. Solomon, I'm sorry, but can I follow on a question that Ms. Goldman asked? She actually triggered a really good question. I think she may have been going in this direction. One of the things that we've become acutely aware of as we're all working remotely is that there are families in our township who may not have remote access to the internet or may not have devices. And I know that in the middle school, we don't send devices home on a regular basis. We have this year because of the need. And I heard it mentioned that there are support materials to go with this. I know in the Spanish curriculum, we're going to see there are fabulous support materials online. And I guess my question is, what are we doing in terms of equity to access to education to make sure that our students who may not have that are getting it? And I know it may not be a significant percentage of our population, but they're still there, and we want to make sure they're getting the quality education we're trying to offer.
I mean, I think I can answer that as an individual teacher. And certainly the internet has a lot to offer in terms of social studies, not just in terms of a textbook, but there's a wealth of resources out there. And so as teachers, we try to make sure that we're really maximizing those as much as we can for every student. And that might mean that we use something really cool online just in the classroom, if not everyone can access it at home. And I think most teachers will do, or all teachers do a good job of making sure that kids can access the work that's assigned to them and the expectations that we have for their performance.
And I think that's an excellent question, Mrs. Dunn. Looking to buy a textbook that has an online component, we've had every student, thanks to our technology department, that needed a device that we deployed a device to. And we've actually worked with our social workers to help get access to either mobile hotspots or free internet for families that needed it. And that's something we certainly need to take into account moving forward with an online textbook, and we'll continue to do so. If there's a family that would have a specific hardship, and the district would be committed to working with that family, whether it would be sending a textbook copy home or continuing to provide devices online and things like that. So I think that's part of our planning as we look at our scope for the fall, is to really look at what worked this spring and what we need to do to meet students' needs and make sure that we're able to meet their needs in the fall and moving forward.
Thank you.
All right, excellent conversation. Are we ready to move on to world language?
Yeah, turn it over to Mr. Budabal to introduce the world language teachers.
Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present the world language textbook. As Mr. Bechtold mentioned earlier, we do have 2 teachers with us from the high school. We have Dr. Donald McGay with us, and also our department chair, Senora Alicia Alfonso. So they can certainly talk to the textbooks and address some of those questions that were just raised. Just a couple, broader comments here before I turn it over to the teachers. World language, it isn't an audit year. So this is the year where you really look at the resources in the textbooks. We sent 6 of our teachers down to Washington, D.C. to attend a conference to just see what's happening, across the nation with best practices. And I think, with going online, things are certainly changing at a very fast rate, as we're all seeing. And one of the neat things about, Senderos, which is the Spanish textbook adoption tonight, is that, 7th graders started with Senderos, and they spent 8th grade with it, 9th, 10th, and so forth. So if you're looking at it, from a large scope and sequence, they'll have potentially the same book, through their high school career. Not to mention it's online too. So those rising freshmen, they may not meet Senora Alfonso, for instance, but they've had the same textbook, the same online access in 8th grade and 7th. So it's going to be a very smooth transition, I think, which is just wonderful. Not all publishers are have these resources, but I think that's going to be a big shift in that market to provide online access and user-friendly resources, whether it's an app on your phone like Schoology has, or just more user accessibility. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. McGay to start. He's first on the list. And just before he speaks, this is a new course, we'll call it Latin 1-2. And he can certainly talk more about it. I'm really excited is that, our world language numbers are robust. They're higher than last year. And, this is a course, we have a full section running next year of Latin 1-2. So these are, almost 25 students that signed up and want to take this course. So he worked with the middle school department chair, Mr. Tom Hagen, to look at the different resources out there. And this is the book they selected. So Dr. McGay, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk more about your adoption.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Budabal. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is a new course. It's a combination 1/2. So for the level 2, it would be a refresher. I guess typically the student would be a 9th grader who decide not to go into advanced, who want a refresher in Latin 1. So when I first heard about this course, and I talked to Mr. Bechtold about this, that the students, and of course, Senor Alfonso, the students would take this course, and at the completion of the course, I have to determine where they need to go, what level they should be in, including the best students, if they're able, to go into 3 honors. So I needed to switch textbooks from what we're using, because those textbooks, the pacing's different. They might spend 3 chapters on a certain tense, for example, and I needed something that would be more compressed with fewer chapters that I could adjust as needed I actually, before even looking at textbooks, Mr. Hagan and I, and this was last year, in fact, Mr. Hagan and my student teacher at the time, we sat down and said, what would be the ideal textbook? And I thought about, what would go into it, how I could teach this material in a sensible way with a sensible pacing. And I started designing one myself, and it would take too much time. I said, let me see what's out there. And Tom and I looked around, and we ordered 2 textbooks. We both are familiar with about a dozen textbooks that are out on the market. The one we looked at was almost, at least the first 6, 7 chapters, almost identical to the sort of framework that we had conceived of. And I think if we do about 4 chapters per marking period, we can get them to a point where a student could start theoretically in Latin 1 and be able to go into 3 honors at the end of the course. Of course, that would be up to my assessment of their proficiency level. So as I wrote, I love the clear presentation. The sentences are interesting, they're fun. The pacing is good, and I can adjust as needed. There's lots of interesting cultural bits. In fact, I'm learning a lot as I'm reading a lot about the cultural stuff. The first chapter, if you notice, had something on Roman superstition. That was very interesting. There's a great companion workbook too to reinforce everything. And I usually write a lot of my own sentences as well. I will be making a OneNote class notebook to go along with this. And I know for the students who may need audio, they can click on OneNote and have those read to them. There is a website that the author has built, and that has a lot of extra exercises and more cultural information. And it just has a lot of great connections with, how does learning Latin benefit our study of English? So you may know that 90% of all English words that are 3 or more syllables come from Latin. So it's going to expose the kids to that. And one thing I have had success with in the past is building up people's vocabularies. There's a lot of great sections. There's something called the aurea dicta, which means golden sayings. So, they can come out of class with clever things to say, more advanced than carpe diem and stuff like that. So essentially it's more a deductive method, but there are sections that are inductive. So getting them to read off the bat. Okay.
All right, committee members, anything that you would like to highlight about this? Andrew, I know you're itching to get in there. Dr. Babson?
I was a classics major in college, so.
Oh, really? Where?
At Xavier in Cincinnati.
Oh, okay. In Cincinnati, I've been there, yeah.
I did the honors AB program there. Anyway, but this is all just music to my ears, and I have no real specific comment, frankly, about the choice of textbook or your pedagogical structure and plan. I just think that it's wonderful that Latin is alive and well at Radnor High School, and that I can also just echo that the study of Latin yields tremendous benefits. I'm biased, obviously, but I think it yields tremendous benefits to kids over one's life. So those are just some brief comments. Sarah, I think, didn't we talk, someone in your life was a classics person as well, right?
Father-in-law was a classics professor for a while.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like you have a go-ahead on this.
Okay, 2 thumbs up.
Awesome. It's a great book.
It's exciting.
Thank you, Dr. McGay.
Yeah,
All
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so again, that was the first for Latin, and the second is Spanish this evening. There's 3 separate documents, but again, it's all senderos, just the 3 different levels. So I'm going to pass it over to our department chair, Alicia, if you're still there. ready to go? Okay, she'll talk more about the book, why they chose it, and just, they've started working with it, I guess, 2 years ago, and it's a continuation. So, Alfonso?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm gonna start with Senderos for Spanish 3. You might see that it's Senderos 2. It's just basically the continuation of the program. As you can see, we are only asking for online subscriptions because we already have the textbook, the class text sets. So we just need the online subscriptions for level 3. We basically Spanish 2 this year, we did chapters 1 through 4. And next year, chapters 1 through 3. And next year for Spanish 3, they will finish the program for chapters 4 through 6. So then the online, that's what we only need online subscriptions. We would not need any more classroom sets or teachers editions because we already have that in place. I was exploring, this is my first year teaching level 5 since Jeanette Walborn retired last year. So I inherited her class and I was exploring different options. As Ryan mentioned, we went to the ACTFL conference. So we were able to see different vendors, different things that they were out there. And we were able to then, the teachers were able to ask for the books and see not only the content, but also the online platforms. A lot of the extra resources that they would have, authentic materials that would be not only easy to navigate for the students, but also easy for the teachers to navigate by being able to modify the assessments in order to make sure that we're reaching our students' needs, because not necessarily all the assessments are going to be according how we teach, but we were looking at programs that would allow us to also make any necessary changes that would benefit our students, how they are learning, and we can pace it for ourselves. So we were looking at many aspects in the different programs. And what we were very happy to encounter that Senderos hybrid virtual learning, I can't remember the publisher by heart. Their program is very, very good. It allows the students to navigate very easily, us to also navigate, get reports, get progress, us to modify exams. It's very friendly for both users. And with this situation, unfortunate situation, we were able to even survey the students, especially my seniors. Did you like it? What did you like? And they were all very, all of the reviews were excellent. They were very happy and it was very easy to navigate. And Lydia, going back to, for instance, what you mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, having the component of a lot of every topic that that I attended at the conference had to do with social justice. It's so important to incorporate it in our curriculum. And that's another thing that I was looking into this, especially in the upper levels, when we are no longer, we're talking about different topics. And this book had a nice platform, nice reading, some literature that was very, conducive for us to be able to have those kind of discussions and incorporate social justice as we go through everything. And that's what even we're doing with levels 1 and levels 2 as we are working with our curriculum as well. So that's what I really like about Senderos level, even though it says level 4 for level 5, is because we're looking at the level of material and reading level for the students. Then I introduced it then to Lucia San Blas and Aracelis Perez, which are the Spanish 4 teachers. And they start looking into the Senderos level 3 for Spanish 4. I'm sorry, Spanish 4 and 5 have never had a textbook per se. This is like something that we want because we're constantly pulling from here, pulling from there and creating our own. But this was giving them, like Ryan mentioned at the beginning of this, a continuation. And what worked very nicely, it was aligned with the same program. So vocabulary wise, the kids would have an excellent foundation. So Mrs. Amblas and Mrs. Perez were very, very pleased and impressed with also Senderos 3 for level Spanish 4. So that's why we were asking to probably also adopt that as well. We're asking as well, like with classroom sets, and based on the numbers that we have historically. So we're asking for classroom sets, and the supplements would be for any additional numbers for the online access. So, any questions?
Okay, committee members, anything?
I'm happy to hear it was just classroom sets, because I was really concerned that our Spanish enrollment was dropping off that precipitously. I took 5 years of Spanish in high school, so big fan. And I actually got on and did some assignments in the homework program there and listened to some of the videos, and I was very impressed. I hope that our students appreciate the difference between that and what I got, which was a textbook, a workbook, and a listening lab. So it's a really very impressive program, and I found that the topics, as you said, were really interesting. So thank you so much. I knew my first reaction was, we approved Senderos already. I remember this from last year. Yeah. But I'm really happy to see, I think you guys had indicated in past that you were thinking of trying to create continuity. I think we moved from Avancemos to the Senderos, and I'm happy to see that you've been able to do that and that you feel that confident in the program. I think looks like you've made a very good decision. So thank you.
I have a question now. Is this the last of the Senderos? Because we have seen them before. So now do we have the complete curriculum, or are we going to need, is this something we're going to need to be reviewing every few years, or are we set now with this curriculum?
Just like Dr. Kearney had mentioned, these programs usually have, at least with the online access, a 6-year lifetime. In the past with Avancemos, even though we finished our license, we were able to renew the license yearly. So, in the sense of, we're probably talking about the lifespan between 7 to 8 years, depending on, on the books. But most of the times we always end up supplementing things with current events, as we always, we've done with languages always. But we're talking about probably like 6 years, 6, 7 years.
Okay, so this is, now we have the complete Senderos ready to go. Okay.
Yeah.
I had a question.
Senderos 5, but it sounds like we're not going to use
No,
that.
Senderos 5 is more like for like AP kind of situation. I looked into it and it was too advanced. And for AP, we're already set with our textbooks and our workbooks, so we don't need anything for level 5 for AP. That's why Senderos 4 for level 5.
And then we're ready. Okay.
Yes.
I have a question about the curriculum review for the world languages. So this is kind of just closing a loop from many years of discussion. So the Mandarin, there was interest in looking at Mandarin, and we had it on our course of studies, I think 2 years, am I right? And 3 years. And so we never got sufficient enrollment to really launch it. And so that was not something that came up in the World Language Review.
We offered for the 3 years. So after that, no, it was not brought up.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make that known, because that had been an interest, I think for the past 10 years, that's been brought up again and again. So, okay. So we've really explored that and offered that, and that hasn't, kids vote with their feet. So I guess that's that for now with that. All right. Are we ready to move on then to Act 158 and the Keystones? Is everybody?
Thank you.
With it? Thank you, Senora Alfonso.
Thank you.
Gracias.
With the textbooks, we are asking that you bring them to the board for adoption this month.
Yes, I thank you. Committee, can I see head nods? We're moving forward. Everybody, thank you. Okay, so Who's handling, I think, Mr. Bechtold, you're doing Act 158 in
That's
Keystone?
correct. So let me pull it up here. All right, so this is just a brief update. Every year, students must that are enrolled in a Keystone course must take a Keystone exam at the end of the course. So any student that's enrolled in Algebra 1 at the conclusion of the course will take the Keystone exam in May. The same goes for students enrolled in biology and literature, although literature is a grade specific reading comprehension exam that RTSD has students take in their 10th grade year. We recently got information from PDE that was updated, and this was due to students not being able to take the Keystone exams in May. So all testing was for obvious reasons due to the COVID-19 issue. Students were not able to take the Keystone exams. So the state came out and said that students who were enrolled in these classes that were unable to take the exams are not required to take the exams, and the parents do not need to opt them out. However, they need to be given an opportunity if they would like to take the exam to take it next school year. Districts will not have negative impact to their school district ranking, and it will not count against teacher evaluations. However, the tricky part comes in the Act 158 expectations, which are the new graduation requirements that students in the class of 2022, which are our current sophomores and below are under, have not been moved. And so those students are required to still hit one of the 5 pathways for students to earn a diploma. And we spoke about this at a previous curriculum committee meeting, and I pulled up from our website. You may recognize this graphic. It is on our district website. If you go to the high school and you look under Keystone Exams, it talks about the 5 different pathways for graduation that our students can go through, and we talked about that previously. So these, which are the Act 158 expectations, are still in place. So that kind of puts us in a difficult spot as high schools across the Commonwealth, because it is essentially taking option number 1 and option number 2, if students do not take these exams next school year, away from them. So that means that as a district, you would have to have the students pass for one of the other 3 pathways. The first one would be, first pathway is then passing the Keystone exam. The second one is a composite score. A passing score is 1,500. So a composite score of 4452 is essentially a super score where you add all their scores up. So it's possible for you to score less than proficient on a couple of the exams, but still make it over the threshold to earn your diploma. The third way is earning a passing grade in your Keystone class, and then finding another data point to get you through, whether it's, they call them alternate assessments, SATs, PSATs, and ACTs. And there are cut scores for each of these. PSATs, it's a 970 that you'd have to have minimum in addition to passing the class. SATs, it's a 1010, and ACTs, it's a 21 score. Advanced coursework, so you'd have to be enrolled in an AP level course and earn at least a 3. Pre-apprenticeship program, or being accepted into a 4-year college. So that is option number 3, or door number 3 to get through. Door number 4 is our CTC students that attend our, what we used to call VOTEX, and their career and technical education students can get through the door to earn a diploma if they score a passing score on the NOCD exam, which is administered at the CTCs, or the NIMS exam. And the last one is students can also demonstrate their proficiency to earn a diploma in the state of Pennsylvania by having a passing grade in the Keystone exams, and then also having evidence which supports that. And they have a couple here listed. So those are the 5 doors that we've got to get the students through. So one of the things that we also found out last week, districts across the state of Pennsylvania were told that that the summer Keystone exam window, which typically runs in the end of July, was being delayed to September. So September 28th through October 2nd, to provide districts the opportunity to test students who missed the exam in May, giving districts another window to test students. Students may elect to test either in this delayed summer window, which starts September 28th. They may elect to test in the winter wave 1 or 2. We have always, as a district, done winter wave 1, which is in December. Winter wave 2 is in January. You have to pick either or. Many schools that picked winter wave 2 are block scheduling schools, and that's why there is a winter wave, because if you're block scheduling, then your biology, algebra, or literature course would end at the semester. We have selected and have used historically December for our window. Students would be eligible to test then, or May with the rest of the students that would be enrolled for biology, algebra, or literature at the beginning of next school year. We were required to put in requests by last week on Friday. As a district, to give us the most flexibility, we ordered tests for all of the students that we were anticipating to test in May. We have had discussions with the department chairs at the high school, the administration at the high school, and the middle school. We do have a planning meeting coming up to make sure that we firm up a plan to meet our students' needs and make sure that we're putting them in the best situation possible. But we wanted to bring this up here with the curriculum committee as an informational item. So this is something that just came out last week that we were working on actively as administration. So we thought we'd bring this forward.
All right.
Ian, can I ask? I'm sorry.
Yeah, committee members, I was going to
No,
say.
because I've had people already asking me this. Are my kids gonna, are they forgiven from taking the Keystones? Because I have kids in those age groups. And I think it's very dense and there's a lot of information here. So I'm just hoping that we can make it really simple for parents, that if your kid was in a Keystone class this year, no, they don't have to take the exam, but they're gonna have the option to take it in this first window in the fall. And you probably want them to do it, it sounds like. If you think or maybe you don't, but if to the extent we can give people guidance, and point them to that pathways site that you mentioned, where it tells people, and just say it's complex, work with your guidance counselor if you have concerns, those kinds of things. Because I think that parents are overloaded with the emails and the documentation of what we have to help our kids with. And I think kids probably thought they were just getting a free pass. So it's good to know that, it's good for them to be educated about what's coming.
Yes, so I think that your points are well taken. We're a high achieving school district. We have phenomenal teachers. Our kids work really hard, and students, historically have done exceptionally well in the Keystone exams. The fact that they've got an opportunity for a super score puts the majority of our students in really good footing if they would take it. As a district, it doesn't negatively impact the district ranking or teacher evaluations or anything like that. If I was a parent in Radnor and had my kids that had to make the decision, I would say, listen, take the exam. You're essentially you're taking 2 opportunities to earn a diploma away from yourself by not doing it. So that is going to be our guidance, for encouraging parents and students to take the exam, because that is a very straightforward way to meet the state law and earn yourself a diploma. And we have the other 3 measures as fallbacks if students are unsuccessful. Ultimately, options 3, 4, and 5 were designed as fallback measures if a student does not pass the Keystone. So by taking the Keystones out, when we have essentially 90% or more of our students pass each of the 3 Keystones, really would put a number of our students at a disadvantage. So, that's one of the things that we want to do, is make sure that we are providing opportunities for students to brush up, because they are not going to be taking it while it's fresh. And so our work with our department chairs and our teachers is going to be, how can we ensure that the students are prepared to take this at a later date because typically they'd be in the throes of it in May. And now we're going to have an opportunity for summer learning loss. So how can we really make sure that whatever we do puts students in the best footing to be successful?
So Dan, are we still sticking with the plan of offering just the biology in September?
So one of the things that we're doing is we're discussing this with our department chairs and our teachers. You know, we've kicked around a number of different ideas. The literature is a reading comprehension exam. So any English class that you're in at the high school, you're going to be working on reading comprehension. So the need for us to administer all of literature in September is not there. One of the things that I'll point out to the committee is that all of the Keystone windows are 2 weeks long, except for this summer extended window. That really puts us in a difficult spot. So we're going to have to be choosy with what we offer because historically we've done one module a day. And so it takes us with makeup time, essentially 2 weeks to get all 6 modules from the 3 different exams done. So that is not going to be possible in 5 days to get 6 modules done and makeup. So we're going to have to go and make decisions about what we think is in the best interest of students and how we can support them. Our initial thoughts were giving biology this and encouraging students to take it in September made the most sense because there's really no part of chemistry, which is the next sequence in our course of study at the high school, that digs into biology that's assessed on the Keystone exams. So there is aspects of algebra in our geometry, and we've used our CP geometry class in the past with algebra openers and closers to help students prepare to retake the Keystone exams, as we have experience doing that. And as I said, the literature is a Keystone reading comprehension, so any English class will cover that. So our initial thoughts, and we've got a planning meeting at the end of this week with the department chairs to go over it again, and then we're meeting with our biology teachers at the high school on Monday to go in and work with them a little bit on this, is looking at what we can put in place to support students for biology in September. And then essentially we would have no exams in December because December has historically been any student that didn't pass in May. So we would have 2 weeks of free time to assess for reading comprehension for our literature exam and our algebra exam in December.
Yeah, so I really support the logic when you explained it about focusing on biology for September. So, but yeah, keep the conversations going with the people on the ground. Yeah. All right, anybody else with Keystones? Go ahead, Amy. Miss Goldman?
Jesse, I'll defer to the student. I saw Jesse's hand sneak in there.
I have to ask, thank you, but I have to ask, what is a course that's associated with the Keystone exam? Is that like Keystone Biology, Keystone Literature?
So, so are you asking what classes take the Keystone exams, Jesse?
Well, on 3, 4, and 5, it says courses associated with each Keystone exam.
Correct.
Is that referring to Keystone Biology, Keystone Literature?
It's referring to, because schools across the Commonwealth can call it different things. So we call ours Honors Biology, Advanced Biology, College Prep Biology. Another district may call it like, academic bio or standard bio or something different. And so they're just essentially saying the course that teaches the content that ends with the Keystone exam being taken.
So for the class of 2022, with whom all of those options still apply, they took bio last year and it was the freshman year, and they took literature last year. And so they've taken all that coursework associated with the Keystone exams. So how is the information being given to those parents who might say, oh, maybe taking an AP course is probably just easier and a more natural course for me to take than taking the AP exam?
No, I think that you raise a good point. I think that that's one of the things that we're looking to do moving forward is really work out what we think is the best way to prepare students And then once we have that game plan, go and put together communication where we clearly explain to parents, here are your different options, and this is our recommendation. But ultimately, it's up to you as a parent and as a student to make that determination. You know, the last thing that we want to do is to set a student up to not be able to walk across the stage and get a diploma. So we want to make sure that we're really providing parents the best guidance to do so. But I think that really starts with us making sure that we've got a firm plan in place to prepare students to take the exam if that's what they elect to do, and have a communication plan ready to go.
Am I wrong in analyzing the document though, in that the class of 22, which is technically not exempt, has already taken biology and literature and thus only needs to take an AP credit to satisfy this requirement? Is that a wrong analysis, or is that true?
That is, so what I'll say is math is off grade level. So students take the algebra in 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, right? So you may have had some students that were sophomores this year that were unable to take it. So they took the class, but not the exam. Biology, we made a change to our program of studies, I believe 2 years ago, where we put in science and the environment to go, and I think this was our first year of science and the environment, where we ran that for our CP level to help build the reading comprehension skills. And so we had a number of students that would take biology next year for the first time as a sophomore. And literature, students historically have taken the literature Keystone exam at the conclusion of their sophomore year, regardless of what their English class they're in. And so those students that are in the class of 2022 would have taken the class, but not the exam. And one of the things I'll say about the pieces of evidence is that you have to pass all 3 classes and you have to have evidence to meet the benchmark. So again, I think it's, you know, one of the things is trying to explain the permutations and keep it clear and concise for parents, because every student's situation is slightly different.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Miss Goldman, did you still have?
I just want to, Dan, we've been talking about Keystones, Mr. Bechtold, we've been talking about Keystones for many years, this graduation requirement. So at this point, because they delayed it, it's the class of 2022 for whom this graduation requirement is in effect, right? At this point, it was going to be 21, now it's the class of 2022. Okay, and the 2 options that are where you can earn a passing grade in the courses instead of taking the exams, it's an all or nothing. I'm trying to parse out what Jesse was saying, that you can't just take 2 Keystones and say, well, for the 3rd class, I'd rather take the AP, or take the course and pass it. It's an all or nothing. You have to take all 3 exams, or you have to move into one of these other pathways. You can't take 2 of the exams and then another pathway.
So I would say that is a tricky question, because parents have had the option historically to review the tests, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and religiously opt out of the test. The guidance from the state that they just gave us was that the students that were course end this year, their parents would give them the option, their parents and the student would be given the option to not have to follow any religious opt-outs. So I guess technically they wouldn't have to take it, and it's not going to negatively impact the school district, but it could, depending on the, you know, where the student stands with the other classes, it could, again, come back to negatively impacted them with getting across the finish line to earn a diploma, which we wouldn't want to do. So technically for this group of students, the students that were course end this year, that are 2022 and below, would never have to take that Keystone exam. But if they do not, would have to find an alternate pathway for that Keystone exam to get across the finish line.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of, I'm still a little unclear, because, you know, if biology is a hurdle, traditionally that's the toughest of the 3 exams. And a parent says, or a student says, I'm going to take the Keystone in algebra, I'm going to take the Keystone in lit, but I'd rather just use my class grade for biology to get me across the finish line. That's not a possibility. You have to take the Keystone in all three or go an alternate route for all three subjects.
Well,
You know what I'm
and
saying?
so what I'd say is it's not just the class grade, right? So let's say that a student would go and they would take the algebra and they'd pass it, and they'd take the literature and they'd pass it. My recommendation would be, especially if they were, we have students that score exceptionally well. If you score exceptionally well and you're looking at avenue number 2, which is a super score of 4452, you don't even really have to pass the exam to get across the finish line.
Right.
And that would be a door option for
Right.
you. If you are looking at taking, religiously opting out under normal circumstances of taking the Keystone exam, and then using a passing grade in a Keystone course, so the biology class you pass, one of the things I would say is you still have to hit, in addition to passing the class, one of those other models. So you have to earn, an 3 on the AP Bio Keystone exam. And I would say my guidance for a family would be, if you think that you are going to get a 3 on the AP Bio exam, then I think that you should probably take the Keystone Biology exam, because my guess is that you would probably do fine on that. It's kind of a trade-off there. So I think that if you're really looking at taking AP Bio, then I think that you would be fine on the Keystone Biology exam.
It'll be interesting to see how families navigate this. I don't know if you've had anybody actually pursue the alternative pathways yet or not. Has that started with students pursuing the alternative pathways?
No. So this is where, so we've had historically good participation numbers. And again, that comes back to because, by not taking those 2 avenues, if you would say, I'm just not going to take the Keystone exams, you're going to take 40% of the options away from your child to earn a diploma. So you're essentially putting them into one of the other silos, which could be would be additional work for those individual students. Our students do historically well. And so we have not seen families or students that have been diverting out into other pathways at this point.
Yeah. Well, it's probably not an issue for Radnor, but I can just imagine for some other districts where students, through no fault of their own, because there was a point in time where some districts just simply didn't have access to the Keystone materials. They flat out didn't have them. I mean, it's hard to imagine that, but they actually didn't have the curriculum to be able to have teachers prepare them for passing Keystones, where these alternative pathways may come into play for them to head to graduation. And just by looking at the alternatives, I know the intention was good, but it's pretty cumbersome, I would imagine, on the part of the administration to track it. And also some of the things that the students need through those alternative pathways are going to be challenging in their own right. So it's good that it's not that much of an issue for Radnor, but I can imagine for other districts that this is still quite a challenging bar to cross. That was really it, is just getting some clarification around this whole new model. Sarah?
I had one question, and it may be just kind of totally out there. Are Keystones, do you have to take them in your home district? So that, for example, if Radnor were offering only biology in September, October window, but a student felt strongly that they wanted to get the literature done or the Algebra 1 done, for whatever reason, could they go take it at Lower Merion or TE if they were offering it at that time, or do you have to take it in your home district?
Yeah, so one of the things is we offer the opportunity for homeschooling residents that are within our boundaries to take it. We have never had a student go to another local high school to take an exam and have never received another one. It's not like an SAT.
That's what I was wondering, if there was some room for that, because then we could even coordinate and say, we'll take a couple of your bio students and you'll take a couple of our. Got it. Okay. Sorry, creativity didn't work there.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Keystones, it's been it's been an interesting road with that. Are we ready to move on to summer enrichment?
Yes, and Mr. Dukevich will be going through with Dr. Kearney on the summer enrichment.
Good evening, everybody. And Mr. Bechtold, would you mind bringing up the presentation?
Yeah, I don't know if everybody on the committee noticed it, but I just saw the email. The presentation was emailed to all of us in case anybody needs to follow it that way. I'm like a printout kind of girl, so just saying.
Thank you, Mr. Bechtold. I'm sorry for the late submission of the presentation, but we're very excited to talk to you today about the summer program that we have set up for to begin in early July. There's a number of different camps we're going to be offering. They're all going to be online, of course, but from enrichment to book camps to ESY to literacy, we're trying to hit on all the things to support our students and offer them some different opportunities to stay engaged during the summer. To begin, our K-5 enrichment camp, which actually already has 151 registrations, and it was just published live on Sunday evening as part of the Radnor Reader. This will run from July 6th through the end of July, and there'll be 4 different opportunities for kids to engage with. They can join one or all 4 if they'd like, anywhere in between. And there's different themes and grade bands based off of each week. So we'll begin with space first week, and then move into backyard science. There'll be a STEAM week, and finally like a digging into the past, kind of a social sciences week. All of our camps I'm going to talk about are open to all students in these grade bands, and they're free of charge. Mr. Bechtold, if you can move on to our 6 and 8 enrichment camps, very similar to our K-5 enrichment camp. This will run a total of 4 weeks with different themes. First is called hands-on engineering. The second will be based on multimedia communications and design. There'll be kind of a private eye situation for week 3, and then a fitness challenge for the 4th week. Again, free to all that want to participate. Moving along in K-5, our librarians are partnering with the librarians at Radnor Memorial Library. They're going to be offering K-5 book clubs, and these will be a combination of synchronous and asynchronous opportunities for students. And the K-5 ones, again, they'll have some live sessions with them through Zoom, and the books will be able to be downloaded as an ebook, and there'll be other opportunities for parents to purchase them if they wanted to. And moving on to 6 to 8, we have 2 book clubs. One is a Suzanne Collins book, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The other is called Feed. These will be open to current 6th to 8th grade students. And again, different weeks they'll be available at different times of the day, so students can engage in multiple different summer programs if they wish. Another 6 to 8 author book club will be situated with Diane Salerno, the author of the 8th Day series. So she will be engaging live with the students who participate in this camp and running some live sessions about that book. This is her most popular book of a trilogy, and she has 5 other published books with 2 more coming out in the fall. She's a local author. And then this summer, the high school summer school will run remotely as well. This summer, it will focus on the topics of advanced algebra, advanced geometry, and honors geometry. And moving on, usually we have an in-person, obviously all these are in-person in the past, but an English language development camp. This year, the online version, and this one just highlights some of the elementary components. There'll be an interface, you can see the small picture on the left, where students will have a number of different links and connections that will take them to different resources that they can do over the summer. The theme in the elementary is going to be on a Bitmoji version of their ELD teacher, that kind of like the flat Stanley model. They will get a Bitmoji of their teacher mailed to them, and they will have different activities to engage with their Bitmoji person, and then upload videos of them with their Bitmoji teacher on a video platform that other students can watch and respond to. On the right, the classroom vignette has different links to different online differentiated self-paced programs to help them with language acquisition. And in the center is just another menu of different practice that they can do to engross themselves in the language in different ways, and then communicate that back to the teacher and share out with their students. And And of course, we're going to run our annual ESY program. This too will be remote, of course. And these are targeted toward our special needs students and be differentiated based off of their program needs and their goals within their IEP. There's two other camps that we're currently working through. One is a literacy camp that we targeted to students who have been identified through established criteria that have, reading needs, and we'll be working with them and targeting that population through an invitation. And then similar to the K-5 and 6 to 8 enrichment, we're currently working on finalizing the 9 to 12 version of that for our high school students. So even though we've just published the registrations in this week, as of late Sunday, we've already had some tremendous responses. So we're very excited about what it'll look like. And although it can't be as good as maybe as an in-person version, we're very excited that we've been able to come up with an online version to engage our kids and keep them going.
And Mr. Dukevich and the teachers, administrators who have been doing this, I just want to thank you. I want to make sure people realize and the board realizes those enrichment programs, this is new. Those programs that are open to everyone, we haven't offered before, and that our teachers, our administrators came together, and in light of, the fact that we've been online and what we've been doing teaching, and in light of all that, wanted to provide some, academic engagement, some opportunities, but keep it also fun and engaging for the kids. So we've added these additional programs for the summer, that are free of charge. The last couple of programs, or the last two, the ELL and the ESY, are programs we've done before, but we've had to do them, online this year. And then the high school, programs we've had before, but we've actually had parents in the past ask for those high school programs online, and they will be online this year. That was one area where people really wanted online the last few summers. But just the administrative effort and the teachers, and Dr. Kearney and the whole team, thank you. Right? It's really exciting programs that we're able to offer, this summer. So I just want to thank you. It's really exciting to see all those.
Were there any questions, or Dr. Kearney, do you have anything to add about the programming?
No, the teachers who've been involved in developing the programs are excited about the opportunity. They've appreciated the chance to get together and think about some interdisciplinary connections in ways that they sometimes don't get the chance to do, and put some offerings out there that they believe will be very appealing to our students, to really just provide some enrichment as was described. So we're looking forward to seeing what we've not only put together, but the response from the community and specifically our students.
And how about staffing for the enrichment classes? What's happening with that?
We have it staffed, and those who built the courses are going to facilitate them, but our registrations have continued to climb, and we are prepared to add staff based off the number of kids. We don't want to cap it and limit the number of registrations. So we are prepared to add staff as we see fit, and that way we can engage as many kids as possible.
And as the programs are designed, most of it will be asynchronous, where the students will be given activities to do, each day of that week that they're enrolled. But then they'll have the opportunity to touch base with a teacher periodically over the week, probably in the beginning to kick things off, and then sometimes towards the middle and the end to see how things are going, continue to help them, and then wrap things up. The book clubs, students obviously will be doing the reading of the books separately from the book clubs, and then come together probably once per week for 2 weeks for each of those books.
Okay. Oh, it's exciting. Ms. Goldman.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. And I think most of us have been really concerned through no fault of anyone's, but this switch to distance learning, I've been thinking about the potential for learning loss through no one's fault, like I said, given that we haven't been in classrooms like we typically are. And so I think this is great. So thank you to everybody who's involved for working, doing the work to make this possible and conducting these classes over the summer. I'm wondering, for the K-5 group, the book clubs are assuming that students can read the books and then they discuss them. There's no reading instruction per se going on. I just wanted to be clear about that, because reading is one of those really fundamental skills in that age group that needs to be focused on?
Yes, so the book clubs are optional. They're open to anyone. They are high interest and they are grade banded. So students will sign up for the grade and the books will accompany their grade. To really address the students who may have a regression in their reading acquisition, that's where the literacy camp's going to come in. And we pre-assessed those students, thankfully, before the closure. And students who had met criteria for that camp were invited to the camp in late winter. And so we've reached back out to them and to gain interest from parents to continue with that. And we have staff who are going to then facilitate live reading groups. That'll look very different from the book club. The book club will be more, they'll read on the side, they'll join the group, they'll talk through, kind of like a literature circle format, where the literacy camp will focus more on maintaining, their acquisition of skills with reading, from phonics to reading comprehension to listening comprehension. All those pieces will be folded into the literacy camp, as it had been in the past in person, where the book club is probably going to be more on an enjoyment level, but certainly there'll be a lot of critical thinking and problem solving and, good reading instruction that'll happen through that as well. The literacy camp is really going to focus on those deficit areas more so than the book club camp.
Right, and I just saw there was a big RAND study on summer learning. I don't know if I imagine you've seen it, but one of the things that they said is most susceptible to learning loss is math skills. You would think reading, but math skills. And I just wanted to, in those early years, and I just wanted to know if in the K-5 enrichment camp, I see space and science, STEAM digging into the past. So is math part of, if someone were particularly concerned for their child about math, where would you direct them in terms of what course to take over the summer? What enrichment program?
To answer your question, Amy, I'm not sure I could tell you which of the four had the most depth or breadth of mathematics specifically, but I can tell you the coaches wanted to make those camps as interdisciplinary as possible, and specific to the bands of K-1, 2 to 3, 4 to 5. So the content that they were working to was developmentally appropriate for them, and to support not only, mostly learned material, of course, they're not introducing new content. Naturally, I think they'll be based, the number systems and operations will be probably the primary mathematics vehicle that they'll work through. So I could ask for you, we could get some more information about which one might be a little heavier in math, but I think the coaches built it so they would have a combination of the different disciplines interwoven through that program that week. But I can certainly find out more which is more math focused than another.
And also I would just chime in for, any parent that may be listening or to that point that you're raising, Amy, any given year, our teachers are giving parents feedback, on individual students, especially at the elementary level, on, things that they might work on, things that they could do during the summer. So if there are parents that have concerns, I'd encourage them, to reach out to their child's teacher and just say, are there, teachers can give different sites. There's so much out there now with different websites of where they can work on math, they can work on, different other academic activities. So I would encourage that. And that's something that we normally encourage as well. And that discussion often naturally happens at the end of the year.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ken. I think this year with as much distance learning that's been going on, I would imagine that parents are eager for their kids to, if these classes are going to be taught in a much more synchronous way, potentially, than what we might have done or might not have done so far, I would imagine a lot of parents would gravitate towards that for their children, to have that contact with the teacher again this summer in a way that they haven't had in several months.
Yeah, well, I'll let Sean jump in to share, but all these classes are not necessarily being designed as synchronized classes. These enrichment opportunities are not being designed as synchronized. There will be teachers and opportunities for check-ins, but they're not being designed as synchronized. Is that accurate, Sean?
I think our literacy camp and our ESY camp will be synchronous, yes. The others that are more enrichment focused will be, as Jim mentioned, a combination of mostly asynchronous with some check-ins that would be synchronous. But I do think that Amy raises a good point about math, and we can certainly put together something where our teachers can share with families a list of links and resources that they could access. A lot of those, the online resources can be great. They're self-guided, they're paced, they build off one another. They incorporate some motivational tactics like badges that kids could earn, kind of like a video game format. So some of those things could be motivational for kids, like First in Math is a very popular one, for example. So we can certainly look at that as well.
Right, and just two more quick questions. They're scheduled such that for any given level, you could potentially have your child take advantage of two if you wanted. There might be a real dearth of summer activities this summer, with some camps open, some not. So this has been designed with the idea that if somebody wanted to load up their child with these age appropriate opportunities, they could do that. They're not overlapping, so you wouldn't be limited to just one, for example. If you wanted to take two, you could. Is that true?
Oh, by all means. Although they may fall in the same week, for example, a student could participate in the book club and the enrichment opportunity. We did make sure that the time of their synchronous pieces would not overlap.
Okay, and just my last question again, just to say it publicly, these are provided for free to families.
Yes, there's no cost.
Yes, which is really, really nice. So, okay, well, thank you again. I think it should bring comfort, and I guess your enrollment numbers show that. It sounds like the board lit up with subscriptions as soon as it went out, which really is reflective of need and interest. So thank you for making that possible.
Yeah, and actually thank you for anticipating that need, that there was going to be interest in that. So there again, we're ahead of the curve. We don't have, Sarah, did you have something on that?
I did. I had a couple of quick questions, if you don't mind. One, I was happy to see, because as you were going through them, that you're working on putting out the literacy camp and that there will be some kind of high school level enrichment. We all know high school students are maybe interested or not in this, but it would be nice as an option. And one of the thoughts I had for them, and you probably have thought of it already, but just in terms of a book club, because I noticed you had book clubs at other levels. And I think high school students, really can have very, very articulate and deep conversations about books. And I know they do a lot of reading during the school year, but I know, there's the regular, advanced and honors track and the curriculum that they read in English and social studies. But then separately, there's the integrated program and they read other books. And it might be an opportunity to kind of swap. And so for kids who read integrated and missed out on some classics in their English class that year, they could go back and read those and interact with kids about those. And the same, there's some really hard hitting, texts that they read or books that they read in the integrated programs that some other kids really might like to spread their wings and read and get into conversations with other kids about. Just a thought. One thing I wanted to clarify, because someone had raised this with me and Amy mentioned it, and I think it's either, it's one way or the other, but the tab about the Radnor High School Summer School, which is 3 different math classes, actually references fees. And it says there's tuition and it talks about submitting your fees. So I just want to clarify, is that program actually have a fee associated with it? I'm not arguing it. I think that it has in the past, but I just want to make sure we're very clear with people. We've been saying all these programs are free.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Dunn. The summer school has always been a charge course. That is a course that students actually earn credit for. It goes on the high school transcript. We have students from inside and outside of Radnor that sign up to take those courses. So we already do have students enrolled and we will be running multiple sections of those, but there is a fee associated with that. The remainder of the courses are truly enrichment courses, and those courses are free and they are listed as such.
And then just as a follow-up based on my equitable access to education, do we have tuition assistance for students who would like to pursue that program over the summer from Radnor and are unable to attend for the cost?
Yes, if we have a student that has a financial hardship, there is a way for them to go and have a fee reduction if they need that. So that is we've done that in the past, and that is yes, that is already built in.
Okay, great. And I want to echo what Amy and everyone else has said. I said to people who were worried, oh, I'm sure the teachers in the district will come up with something over the summer, and I'm glad you didn't make a liar. This is far more than I expected. I kind of expected some assignments posted on Schoology for kids to do enrichment. And I really appreciate the thoughtfulness that went into this in the midst of everything else that I know everyone, you guys and the teachers have all had going on. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for catching that about the high school fee structure. I'm glad that was clarified. So we have one item left on the agenda. Dr. Babson?
Sure. This is more of a comment. Questions were answered in the pre-meeting, but something that I mentioned in that meeting, and I just want to echo it here, something along the lines of what Amy was saying, which is that, you know, as the parent of a second grader, I can tell you, and we're opting not to send him to camp or his sister, much to their chagrin, I should say. But my point is that a little bit of structure right now can really help a lot of kids. And I think that our district stepping up like this and providing that structure, if the kids want it, the parents want it, I think it's huge. So, you know, other people have said kudos to all the staff, teaching staff, everyone for stepping up and providing this for our kids. I think right now it's very important. So just wanted to say that.
All right, so we have one item left on the agenda, which I thought would take probably more than 15 minutes anyway. We are 2 minutes past our allotted time. What is our suggestion? Should we roll that to our second meeting, which is already full?
Yes, the recommendation would be to end this meeting and move that to our next meeting in June. We can certainly talk about priority of agenda items that we have slated, because we do have 2 meetings this month and the next one was already full. We can talk about what takes priority and what we could move to August.
Yeah, there's just so much curriculum wise. And so I'm just very appreciative that we were able to have 2 meetings for the curriculum committee in June. There's just a lot to cover and we're still struggling to get through everything, but it's so important. I mean, I'm very appreciative that everybody's really putting the effort into this area, because this is really what we need to be doing now. So really thank you guys for your hard work on this. I know that there's a lot of demands on your time, and we really appreciate you focusing on this area for our students. All right, I think with that, we will wrap up our curriculum committee.
Do you want to check for new business?
Oh,
or
yeah,
comment?
thank you, Amy. We do, since we missed it, is there any new business, first of all? Anybody? I think we're good there. And we did miss public comment. Mr. Petiti, is there any public comment for curriculum?
Yes, I'm here. I have 2 public comments. The first is from Jennifer Hattersley. Dear Radnor Township School Board, good evening. I'm reaching out with a question about the decision to host the SATs/subject tests at Radnor High School this summer fall. This week, College Board sent out an email allowing students the option to sign in for in-person SATs starting in August. There have been widespread issues with sign-ups, including spots filling quickly and students being closed out almost immediately. I was surprised to see that Radnor High School is not on the list for any of the 2020 dates, August through December. As I understand, the administration will not host this summer and perhaps not even in the fall. As a parent of a rising senior who not only got to take the test once last October, I really hope that Radnor will work hard to accommodate their students. At minimum, it seems that they could host only Radnor students. The ability to take the test, so relevant for many colleges, only works if schools partner with College Board to make sites and proctors available. If social distancing is a priority, the need for many testing centers and many test dates is even more important. I hope that the district will address the concern soon, even if a plan is not yet in place. For reference, many of the other schools in our area are listed as testing sites, e.g. Conestoga High School, Lower Marion, Haverford, Markle Newtown, Delaware County Christian School. I will welcome a reply to my email, if even to note that the district is continuing to weigh their options, but a reason as to why they would not open up RHS for testing will be appreciated. As one of the largest high schools in the area and with a high-achieving student population, I hope Radnor will be part of the solution to support students who would like the option to take the test in 2020 and certainly before applications are due. Thank you. And then the next message is from Anne Marie Jones. Dear curriculum members and administrators, I'd like to propose the RTSD School Board and Administration to consider a 2-pronged approach to teaching racial and religious tolerance in the Radnor Township School District. First, our children could greatly benefit from curriculum that addresses systemic racism and religious tolerance at the elementary and secondary levels, in age-appropriate doses. Secondly, I've heard from several RMS and RHS parents these past few days, and they are saying the following. Their children have so many questions about social justice, their hearts are aching from the most recent injustices, their children are having a hard time processing, and they, as parents, do not have the right answers to help them grow from this. A solution is already partly underway, as many students at RHS have read Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson in one of their classes this year. I've been working with his brother on a project, and he clued me into how we could possibly get Brian here during the 2021 school year to address both schools as part of a seminar. Actually, Michelle Wetzel was looking into this at one point. Why not take this opportunity to educate our children and help them to grow in understanding and empathy rather than fear, which can happen if not addressed? Fear evidently manifests itself into many different forms of ignorance and intolerance. I've lived, taught, and researched racial relations all my life. As a biracial woman, I live with one foot in each world. I admit with shame that I lean heavier on the foot in the white world because I pass as white, and the white world comes with many more privileges. Even though my children are exposed to both their black and white relatives, I still need the school's help in guiding them and their peers on how to be tolerant of others who are different. They've come home with questions because a friend said this or that, and they have repeated something racially insensitive that needs to be corrected. I'm not blaming school, and I don't expect perfection, but there is room for more education and guidance. As a former teacher in Manalapan/English Town School District, I taught a social studies unit on the Holocaust. The whole unit was strictly about tolerance and intolerance. We taught how misinformation and lack of education leads to fear and biases that can manifest and escalate into intolerance, hatred, violence, and in the case of the Holocaust, mass genocide. We had many interestingly wonderful and tangible lessons and discussions that really hit home and impacted the children in a positive way. The feedback from parents was tremendous. I'm currently working on a podcast called Demystifying Diversity, and along the research and production process, I've met many local experts in the field of race, such as Howard Stevenson at UPenn. Howard Stevenson is an nationally recognized expert on how racial stress and trauma can affect every stage of life. His work focuses on how educators, community leaders, and parents can emotionally resolve face-to-face, racially stressful encounters that reflect racial profiling in public spaces, fuel social conflicts in neighborhoods, and undermine student emotional well-being and academic achievement in the classroom. Dr. Stevenson has served for 30 years as a clinical consulting psychologist working in impoverished rural and urban neighborhoods across the country. I'm sure he or any other expert could help to develop curriculum that will enrich the lives of our students and their parents for years to come. I hope you can see that I'm not reacting to current events. Instead, I'm using what's happening now as a springboard to ask the school board and administration to consider researching how to better educate our students about racial and religious tolerance. Students are hungry for appropriate information, and as a parent of 3 children in the RTSD school district, I think it is important and timely that we give it to them. Many other parents believe it is time too. Will this be something that the district will consider? Peace and gratitude. That is all.
Is that it for public comment, Mr. Petiti?
Yep, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That brings us to the conclusion of our meeting. We have another committee meeting in June, as I said. It will be a 2-hour meeting on June 16th at 5 p.m. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.